Hi, boys and girls. This is Mrs. McGinnis, and I am going to read to you one of my favorite stories. It's called A Warm, Fuzzy Tale. This is a story about some special little people from long ago who lived in a place called Fuzzyland. They were very happy little people who always had big smiles on their faces and cheerfully greeted everyone they met. The little people were always being kind and helpful and courteous to one another, and because of this, the people in Fuzzyland never got sick. They always felt happy and healthy every day. Do you think you would have liked to have lived in Fuzzyland? Well, if you had, you would have worn something really special called a fuzzy bag. Everyone in Fuzzyland wore a fuzzy bag attached to his or her belt. Inside the fuzzy bag were the most wonderful things: warm fuzzies. One of the things Fuzzylanders liked to do best was to give warm fuzzies to one another. Each of them wore a fuzzy bag, which was filled with warm fuzzies. Whenever two Fuzzylanders would meet, each would give the other a warm fuzzy. Now, it is an especially nice thing to give someone a warm fuzzy. It tells the person they are special. It is a way of saying, I like you. And of course, it is very pleasing when someone gives you a warm fuzzy. When you have a warm fuzzy held out to you, you take it and you feel its warmth and fuzziness against your cheek. You feel noticed and appreciated and loved. The warm fuzzy feeling is even inside you. When someone gives you this extra nice feeling with a warm fuzzy, you can't help but say, wow. This warm and fuzzy good feeling inside of you has a special name. It is called self-confidence. I bet you have all felt self-confidence before. It is a very strong, good feeling. You feel loved by others, and you like yourself too. The people in Fuzzyland enjoyed feeling self-confident all of the time. All of the giving and receiving of warm fuzzies seemed to keep a feeling of love and respect surrounding them. Even if a Fuzzylander didn't see anyone for a while and didn't receive any new fuzzies, he could still give himself a warm fuzzy. He could take one out of his fuzzy bag, sit it on his shoulder, and just enjoy that marvelous good feeling on his own. Now, just outside the Fuzzyland village, a great green troll lived in a cold, dark cave. He didn't really like himself, and sometimes he was very lonely. But he just couldn't seem to get along with anyone else. And you know what else? The green troll didn't enjoy exchanging warm fuzzies. In fact, he thought it was a lot of nonsense. He said, exchanging fuzzies isn't cool. The green troll felt very angry most of the time. He was especially angry at the Fuzzylanders, especially because they always seemed so happy. He didn't like anyone. He didn't even like himself. One day, the green troll was in an especially bad mood. He wanted to take it out on someone. So he decided to take a walk to the village in Fuzzyland. The first person the green troll met was little Susie Fuzzylander. Susie reached into her fuzzy bag and pulled out a bright yellow fuzzy. "Isn't it a beautiful day?" she said. "Here, have a warm fuzzy. This one is just for you." Suddenly, the green troll had an idea. It was a terrible idea that just might stop this whole fuzzy business in Fuzzyland. The troll put one arm around little Susie and whispered in her ear, "Don't you know that if you give away all your warm fuzzies, one of these days you're going to run out of them?" Now, Susie knew that each Fuzzylander had a never-ending supply of fuzzies in his bag. She knew that every time you gave a warm fuzzy away, another one would take its place, and that you could never run out of fuzzies. But all the same, Susie began to worry. What if the green troll was right? She felt very confused. Meanwhile, the green troll walked throughout the village, telling each Fuzzylander he met to be careful with their warm fuzzies. They might run out. After hearing the green troll's warning, the Fuzzylanders began to hoard their fuzzies. They avoided meeting one another on the streets for fear of having to give away a warm fuzzy. They stayed at home and even hid their warm fuzzy bags. Sometimes they had fights about the fuzzies, and there were even some instances of robberies of warm fuzzies. Fuzzyland was no longer a happy and loving place to live. Worst of all, the Fuzzylanders began to get sick. They began to complain of pains in their shoulders and backs. As time went on, more and more Fuzzylanders had the disease called shrivelback. Now, the green troll had been feeling very pleased with himself. His trick had worked. But when he heard that some of the little people were very sick, he felt awful. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said. He wondered what he could do, and then he came up with a plan. Deep in his cave, the troll discovered a secret mine of cold pricklies. He decided to dig out a couple hundred of them, put them in bags, and sell them to the Fuzzylanders. The Fuzzylanders were glad to get the bags of cold pricklies. Now they had something to give to one another again. The only trouble was that it was not as much fun to give a cold prickly as a warm fuzzy. Warm fuzzies had made people feel good because the fuzzies let people know they were appreciated and loved. This was not the case with cold pricklies. Getting a cold prickly gave you a funny feeling. You weren't sure what the giver meant. Cold pricklies left you feeling confused and sometimes even hurt because, after all, they were cold and prickly. Instead of saying, "Wow," like when you got a warm fuzzy from someone, a cold prickly made you feel very uncomfortable, and you usually said, "Ouch." Many of the Fuzzylanders became sick with the shrivelback disease. The other Fuzzylanders took lots of cold pricklies to them. They hoped the cold pricklies would help them feel better. But do you know what happened? The Fuzzylanders got sicker. Their backs shriveled up more, and some of them even died. Little Susie Fuzzylander was very sad. Her grandmother was very sick with the shrivelback disease, and Susie was afraid she might die. Suddenly, Susie had an idea. Well, the very next morning, every Fuzzylander was up and dressed at sunrise. In one hand, they each held out their bags of cold pricklies, and in the other hand, they held their fuzzy bags. Quietly, and with great big smiles on their faces, they walked over the hills to where Green Troll's dark cave was. When they got to the cave, each Fuzzylander took several warm fuzzies from his or her bag. One by one, they stacked the fuzzies at the opening of the Green Troll's cave. Soon the cave was completely covered. They knew, in order to get out of his cave, the Green Troll would have to be touched by warm fuzzies. So they gathered together and began to call softly to him. "Good morning, Green Troll. Wake up. Please come out." Green Troll did wake up, and it was very dark inside his cave since the door was covered up. He was still sleepy and wondered who was calling him. So he got up and he began to walk out of his cave. Suddenly, there the Green Troll was, completely covered with warm fuzzies. He did not know what was happening. All he knew was that all of a sudden, he felt all warm and fuzzy and wonderful inside. A big smile spread across his green face, and the Green Troll looked up at all the Fuzzylanders. They began to sing their fuzzy song to the troll, and this is how it went. "Warm fuzzies, we love to give warm fuzzies. Soft and warm, sweet and kind, they will make you feel all right." Well, the Green Troll felt very sorry for his awful trick. A tear trickled down his long green nose, and he apologized to all of the Fuzzylanders. And then he said thank you to each of them. He was so glad they weren't mad at him. He really didn't mean to be so mean. It's just that he was so lonely and jealous of how happy the Fuzzylanders were. "Hooray for the Green Troll!" the Fuzzylanders shouted. "He's our friend forever." And that was the best warm fuzzy of all. The end.